It had been 7 standard galactic months since we'd been fleeced by the Castellians. Over the last few jobs, we'd finally managed to scramble the extra 100k credits. Our ship was literally falling to pieces by then. We had to eject a reactor core due to it leaking radiation. Half our hull was patched up with sheet metal, and our rotary cannon didn't spin anymore. Still, we got a good 200k for it to scrap metal. But it didn't matter anymore. An old scavenger owed our captain a favour, and for 400,000 credits he got us something which was easily worth far more. A restored Paratan destroyer from the Yamaro Sector Civil War. And let me tell you, it was beautiful. 80 meters of chrome steel, 4 Mangler patterned autocannons, and a stealth system which would let us bypass patrols across half the known galaxy. No more hiding in scrap fields. No more being outgunned by everything short of a probe. Still, we had to convert some parts of it. We were only 24 crew members, not 200 like this thing would normally field. Even with our new recruits, we had 150 bunks too many, not to mention the fact they were all made for Paratans, and those things are huge. So we converted much of it to cargo hangars, and most of the bunks into cabins. Except one. We kept one of the bunks as is, oversized as it was for us. I insisted to the captain that he was right on that asteroid. We did need to get a human. It was either that or outfit ourselves with substantially higher quality weaponry. We were out of favours for forbidden equipment, so Captain Falloff had to acquiesce. The warp drive spat us out to the edge of Sector 052-C, a perfectly unimportant system in most circumstances. All there was here was an asteroid belt surrounding a brown dwarf, but in orbit around this foul star was currently one of the humans' massive colony ships. They had long since stopped searching for planets to colonize, and became the colonies themselves, housing the humans' now almost entirely spaceborne civilization. This one was called the Horus, a monstrously huge, 97-kilometer ship. Like a massive barrel, floating in space, covered in turrets along its circumference, with a torch drive as bright as a small star on one side, and a massive hangar on the other. We carefully manoeuvred ourselves in front of the titanic titanium structure, and sent the codes we received when scheduling an appointment. We made our way to the Human Mercenary Management Office, or the 3MO for short, and negotiated a contract. The captain nearly had a stroke when the bill for a single human mercenary was 80k credits per year, 10 times what we pay Solosians. But when I reminded him the lack of a human had cost us more than that in half as long, he reluctantly agreed. And that is how Amari ended a crew member aboard our newly named ship, the Chrome Comet. He was different from the first human we met. He was male and taller, closer to 20 hands tall. His skin was closer to a dark earth colour than the sandish beige of the Castellian's associate. Still, he was quite polite, generally friendly, and damn terrifying in a fight. Aside from his, by our standards, strange sleeping habits and gargantuan quantities of food consumed, having a giant in our ship quickly became something we were used to. It wasn't long before a job inevitably turned sour. Apparently our intel wasn't as exclusive as we thought, and another crew went down to Yoru Station's old sewage plant looking for the same blueprints we did. I slammed the button to open our new human compatriots' bunk. There he was, sitting cleaning that strange human handgun of his. Amari, the retrieval team called for backup. Apparently they're not alone. Are we going in armed? He asked, getting up. I nodded. 40 seconds, ma'am, and I'm ready. The ship's pilot manoeuvred us to an old docking bay that hadn't been used in 60 years or more. It wasn't exactly safe, but it could hold an atmosphere long enough that it was less than a minute away from the old sewage plant. We hadn't landed there earlier due to the station patrols closing the zone off, but time was of the essence and we put that stealth system to use. The captain led the charge down the corridors until we burst in with a dozen armed crew and our human. There, pointing their own guns towards our surrendering comrades, was another group of Solosians, and amongst them, standing tall, was their own human, holding one of their strange SMGs. Immediately we bolted for cover behind old water purification machinery, the enemy group following. I poked my head out for a second, and saw that the humans hadn't moved, and were still standing out in the open. Amari, what the hell are you doing? I yelled in panic confusion. But Amari ignored the captain and I's cries, and he proceeded to walk over towards the other human. They met in the middle of the room, exposed to all our eyes. Both groups stared over at the humans, waiting for one to draw first blood and begin the battle. They were talking, too softly for us to hear them properly from the distance that separated us. I saw the other human reach into his bandolier, I began taking aim as I feared he would pull a weapon, but he simply held out his hand. Omari grabbed what was offered to him and popped it in his mouth, beginning to chew on it. Then they both stepped away and went over to sit on discarded metal crates and began conversing. I watched them in stunned silence. I was expecting a shootout or for them to start clobbering each other with those gigantic fists of theirs, but there they were, just sitting. The other Stellosians seemed just as confused as us, and no gunshots flew as we stared at each other. Then to the humans and back. "All of you stay here," I said, as I folded over my cover and began walking towards the humans. "Cacticus! Get back here, you oaf!" Captain Fellows said in a loud whisper. I approached, seeing half a dozen rifles pointed towards me, until I was close enough to hear the conversation the two giants were having. "So, where you from?" the other human asked. "From the Horus, Deck 15 specifically," Omari answered. "Ah, never been there myself. I'm from the Seth myself, Deck 42. "No shit, my cousin lives there. Have you ever been to the Red Cassava?" "The restaurant? Yeah, once or twice." "That's my cousin's shop." "Well, ain't that something? Small galaxy, I guess." Excuse me," I interrupted the humans. "Yes, ma'am," Omari answered, nonchalantly chewing on what the other human had offered him. "Might I ask, what are you doing?" I said tentatively. "Talking," he answered, slightly puzzled. "Yes, but why?" "What do you mean, why?" he answered, now thoroughly confused. A Stellosian from the other group had creeped his way up to us by then. I noticed him as he spoke up. "Steve, what the fuck?" he asked loudly. "What do you mean, what the fuck?" Steve answered incredulously. "Why are you sitting down showing gun with the enemy?" the Stellosian said angrily. The two humans stared at each other briefly before Steve loudly realized something. "Oh, they don't know about the Accord." "But it's written in the contract they signed," Omari responded. "Apparently they didn't read it thoroughly enough. Right so," he turned to us before continuing. "If you check section 32 on inadmissible demands, you will see that the fourth one is no human will fight another. Attempting to force a human conflict will result in termination of your contract, without refunds, and a permanent ban from employing any further human forces across all the 11 colony ships. Yes, with all due respect, ma'am Cacticus, we're not going to break the Fatima Accord, especially not over such a small matter." "The what now?" the other Stellosian asked. "The Fatima Accord. When we left Earth, the then captain of the Osiris, Fatima Rashilda, wrote up an accord whereupon every human swore they wouldn't fight each other. It's kind of like central to our modern culture," Omari explained. "Yeah, we've already given in fighting each other department. Plenty of things out there to fight instead of each other, and we're not breaking 350 years of peace over a fucking sewage plant blueprint," Steve added, thoroughly annoyed. "So, what now?" I asked. "Well, you're free to shoot at each other like morons, but you'll do it without us," Steve said. We waited a few moments in silence, unsure as to how to proceed. Both groups had lost their biggest asset, and as of right now, nobody seemed willing to take the first shot, especially knowing they wouldn't have their behemoth to lead the charge. "It would be a bit silly to risk life and limb over the file, right?" I asked the other Stellosian. "I mean, I guess," he answered, scratching his ear. "We're not even sure the sell value will cover the medical expenses of a fight. It could be corrupted and worthless for all we know," I continued. Yeah, that's a good point. Listen, I'll go get my captain, you go get yours, and let's negotiate." I acquiesced, and we both turned to make it back to our respective sides. As he walked away, I heard him mutter about this being the weirdest standoff he'd ever been in. I jogged back to where Captain Falloff was taking cover. "What's going on?" he asked. "The humans won't fight." "What? The warrior species won't fight? Is this a joke?" "Warriors to others, but not to themselves, apparently," I said before adding, "Look, we have no proof that file is actually worth all that much. We're working off rumours. Let's just talk to the other captain." The captain followed me back to the centre of the room, alongside a few armsmen. The other captain also followed. A few minutes of negotiating later, we agreed to forgive and forget, and to split the profit of the blueprint if it was worth anything. And as we downloaded the file, we realised that, with its age and degradation, it was probably worth at most 300 credits. Steve's captain offered to let us keep it, to cover the cost of our wounded men, and we accepted. Both crews left, nobody dead, and thoroughly befuddled at how the whole situation turned out. And I wondered if us Stellosians would benefit from an accord like that. And how the humans had even managed to make it work.